welcome to our first pilot episode of Allies, a kind of show where we talk about what's happened in countries who are friendly to Ukraine since February 24, since Russian invasion of Ukraine. We try to find out how their political systems changed, how their just basically how their societies changed since then, because the event was kind of had tremendous effect on not just Ukraine but other countries as well. And today we are going to talk about Lithuania with analyst from East Europe Studies Center, Adam Roževič. Hello there. And yeah, first of all, when we talk about Lithuania, it's kind of like a small but formidable country, in my opinion. And I got to be clear here. I studied in Lithuania, and I know a little bit about the country, but I was never that interested in like internal politics of Lithuania, and I have had and still have little idea about how it functions, what are the main political parties in Lithuania, and things like that. So if you're comfortable with this, if you could just start by telling about how political system of Lithuania functions, who has greater power? Is it the president or the Seimas or somebody else?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. Basically, we have parliamentary elections every 4 years. Every 5 years, we have the presidential elections. We have 3 main governing bodies. So it's the presidential office, we have the government, and we have the parliament called Seimas. And there's quite robust checks and balances system between those bodies. There are some disagreements in which sector of policy should be reserved to one and another body, but more or less there is very clear consensus what everybody of the government basically does. So president is the main chief of army, and he directs the foreign policy. The government is has the ability to execute the policies, and sometimes the government can introduce some policy changes to the Seimas, and then Seimas as a legislative body basically just votes on them. We have probably maybe 4, 5, 6 classical parties, political parties that we can call mainstream. So we have the Conservative Party, TSLKD, which is one of the oldest parties in Lithuania. We have the Social Democrats, also one of the oldest political parties in Lithuania. Although a few years ago there was some people left from the Social Democrats and basically created their own party because of the internal disagreements. But that smaller party is not as significant as the Social Democrats now. And the Social Democrats are one of those parties who, by the polling now, is one of the most popular because they are in opposition right now. The ruling party is the Conservatives with the 2 liberal parties. The one liberal party is the Party of Freedom, Laisvės Partija, which is a very young party, but also quite energetic party, and they unexpectedly got a lot of votes, and they formed a coalition with the Conservative Party and another liberal party, the Liberal Sąjūdis, so it's basically the Liberal Union, something like that, and it's also quite old party. Well, not as old as Social Democrats, but is also quite mainstream party, to be honest. So we have now 3 parties on the opposition and 3 parties in the position. In the opposition, it would be the Social Democrats, one of the biggest. Another party is the Green and Farmers Party, which were the ruling party last parliamentary cycle. And we have also the Democrats, the Democrats basically. So after the last parliamentary cycle, the Greens party got split, and the Saulius Skvernelis, the former prime minister, basically with his colleagues formed a new party. And also that party looks they have quite good prospects of maybe on winning the elections in 2024. So this is very brief explanations. Also, there are some minor parties which also can be regarded quite old, but now they do not play any significant role.
Yeah, thank you. That's perfect, actually. How would you say, were there any changes since February 24 in the coalition government, or in just general disposition of the parties in the parliament? Were they united on the invasion of Ukraine, or were there any parties who would promote like Russian narratives, or how would you say?
To speak broadly, there were no specific changes because we have the very clear political consensus on what Russia is, how to deal with Russia, and there is a consensus how we need to increase the spending. After 24th of February, there were maybe not a major tectonic shift, but the things were speeding up because there was a very clear need to increase the defense spending, to establish a new agreement. How should we proceed with for example, procurement of the defensive various equipment and so on. So there were the things were made faster rather than it would be in the peacetime, but there is very strong parliamentary and institutional consensus on that everybody knows what Russia is, and there is no major paradigm discussion. Should we maybe have closer ties with Russia? There's nothing like that.
Maybe you have some initiatives, like local initiatives, or say like local governments who have some like strong pro-Russian presence. So, or do you know of any such things?
Yeah, this is one of the very complicated issue, I would say. It's not only it's not should be regarded as, for example, as a clearly pro-Russian party, but we have that Polish minority party, Lenkų Rinkimų Akcija, which is basically the party that should have represented the Polish minority in Lithuania, which is quite significant. It's around 200,000, so around 7-8% of whole Lithuanian population. And plus, we have also around 200,000 of ethnic Russians living in Lithuania. So basically, we have those municipalities, and we have those regions where the more densely where the ethnic minorities are more densely, they're living more densely in those areas. For example, Klaipėda, Visaginas, and Šalčininkai, we have those regions, and those regions could be seen sometimes as pro-Russian because in comparison to the Lithuanian maybe place to the Lithuanian cities, those municipalities tend to show some pro-Russian sentiment. But also we need to take in mind there is very strong Russian disinformation campaigns. They're very specifically tailored and directed against those regions to sow distrust and mistrust of the Lithuanian government. There were also various historical problems which were still not, sometimes they're regarded as a taboo and so on. And basically we also have it is very possible to say that we have some malign actors, specific individuals who would like to, who try and spread some Russian propaganda and Russian disinformation. One of the most famous cases for the past 2 months, we had Zbigniew Jedinski. He was one of the most prominent politicians in that Polish party. He basically said that Poland should abandon NATO and EU membership and seek the alliance with Russia because that alliance would be built on the Christian values. Basically, some very crazy things like that. He said that, and there was immediately a backlash in the public. He lost his job because he was working as an advisor to one of the members of the parliament. He lost that job, and also a few people from that party also quit the party because they were saying that it is unacceptable. But we need to know and we need to understand some people in that party who have a very clearly pro-Russian stance. And there were even indications that maybe some people from that party were even working with the Russian diplomats. They were meeting with Russian diplomats and so on. So there are some various allegations, but there are still no very clear. There were no clear indication from the secret services that there's imminent danger from these people.
That's really interesting because this clearly comes in clear contrast with the position of the Polish government, who would probably be interested in supporting Polish minority. Why is it so, or is it just allegations?
Well, not to go deep down to this problem, because this is quite also broad issue that we have in Lithuania. But basically, because of the Russian propaganda that was basically pumped to this region for 30 years, a lot of ethnic Poles were tried to identify closer with the Russians than with the Lithuanians or the Polish major. And because of that, we have this very interesting distinction that the Poles from the Lithuania, they sometimes tend to be more pro-Russian than the Poles from the Poland. But it's not a general rule, because there is a lot of normal people who do not share the pro-Russian sentiments. But there are some people that tend to feel closer to the Russian culture, to the Russian television, to the Russian overall media and so on. Because they do not have their identities sometimes were formed during the Soviet times. Maybe they had to go to the Russian school. Maybe they had closer connections, like just friends and their environment more Russian, and that's it. You don't need that much to have those to form those pro-Russian sentiments. So there is multitude of reasons why is that, but I try to just very broadly sum up some of those.
Yes, thank you. Actually, that's quite understandable from Ukrainian perspective, because we have had things like that happen in Ukraine for many years, and there is nothing in particular wrong with that, because because it's how things were at the time, and it's really hard to break that connection. Let's say, let's put it like that. Although we do try. How about we switch a little bit to the economic part of things, because I know that last year you had big altercation with China regarding the introduction of Taiwanese, basically embassy, and now you clearly breaking ties with Russia bit by bit. How will Lithuanian economy respond to this? Will it suffer greatly, or is it calculated?
Well, it is quite a difficult question, because there is no clear vision how the sanctions in the future will work. Will there be, for example, the oil embargo or no? Will there be a gas embargo or no? So there is a lot of those questions which is still variables, very unknown variables. But from today's perspective, I think Lithuania learned its lessons from 2013, 2014, when the Lithuania was incredibly that we were incredibly interdependent with Russia. Would it be trade, the energy security, and so on? From 2014, when after the illegal occupation of Crimea, Lithuanian government tried to be that member of European Union who should be the lobbying for sanctions, basically the more stricter sanctions against Russia. And we did some homework on this front, but still due to the geography where this basically a land bridge between East and the West. So we have quite a lot of problems regarding will we be able to transport the goods from European Union to, for example, to the Kazakhstan and other basically countries. We also have unanswered questions regarding various potash, how it's called, I forgot, supplements for the farming, basically.
Yeah, okay, I understand what you mean. I fortunately forgot the name in English.
Yeah. Basically, we need
Yeah.
some things for the farming because Lithuania is still quite an agricultural. We have quite strong agricultural sector, so we need things like that to basically to grow something. And we also we did quite a lot of export to Belarus, starting from various how it's called woodworks and so on. So we will take the hit, but it won't be that as that hard, basically, as some Russian propagandists tend to say. And we also understand that we need to we need to weaken Russia as much as we can, because if Russia is not stopped right now, it is very dangerous path to go, because we don't know who will be the next target of Putin's Russia. So there's very clear understanding of that, but there will be problems to argument for the higher, for example, prices of living, to argument why is the inflation so high to the general public after a few years. And I hope that the politicians will be able to find these arguments to keep the sanctions going and keep this regime of sanctions going against Russia, because we will feel it, but it will not be as significant blow that will collapse or something like that.
Yeah, I see. You mentioned gas sanctions, and I believe Lithuania is one of the few countries who've basically sorted this issue a long time ago. You've introduced LNG terminal called Independence. If I remember correctly, it was 2009. And since then, you had like lots and lots of discussions in the country whether it was a good investment or not, because there was just cheap Russian gas just next to you, while you spend lots and lots of your kind of limited national budget on this terminal. But now it's clearly a big step compared to even like bigger economies of the European Union. How are things with the terminal now? How are you sorting this? Are you helping your neighbors or what's going on?
Basically, this LNG terminal is one of the biggest wins in our energy, in overall in our security for the past 30 years. There were a lot of critics, and there was some truth to that, because that terminal it was quite expensive, but we had very first-hand experience what it means when the Gazprom tries to manipulate the prices. We saw 2008 when the Russia basically cut off the gas for Lithuania for a few days, and we needed something to do about it. And we also remember the Ukrainian perspective when Russia tried to manipulate the gas prices, and those few gas crises that Russia created was a very vivid experience for us, and we knew that we cannot be dependent on Russian gas, basically, because this is a liability that we cannot be comfortable with. And as I mentioned, the idea of the LNG terminal was floating in Lithuania for quite a long time, and finally, I think it was 2014 14 or 15, maybe 15, that it arrived basically. We were paying quite a lot of money for that, but as we see now, it was a very sober and a very good idea to have this backup plan, because now we are not buying Russian gas at all, which is also quite symbolically significant. And also we are helping right now with this LNG terminal Poland and Latvia. And even though the capacity of this LNG terminal is not as big that we could supply the gas for all of us, for the Baltics and the Poland, but we still have the ability to at least partially compensate the gas for Latvia, Estonia, and for Poland. So yeah, it was expensive but very needed option that I think our policymakers and the analysts have predicted very well, that we need this, because like we know that there are only few things that Russia sells to the West, exports to the West. So it's gas, oil, and fear basically, and as we were trying to have this very active foreign policy, and we were trying to be this leader in the region, we knew that if we want to have this independent foreign policy, we need to cut the independence from the Russian gas.
Yeah, that's a great example of foresight on your part. Yeah, regarding your leadership in the region, a few more of my colleagues wanted me to ask you whether Lithuania has tried or has tried to initiate or create like a united military command for the region. Are there any tries to head in this direction? Have you heard of this?
So when we are talking about the military cooperation with the in the region, first of all, the sacred thing is NATO. Basically, everything goes through NATO, headquarters, through NATO framework, and this is the pillar stone of our security. But also, Lithuania likes to engage sometimes in bilateral, trilateral, or the multinational various formats, but they're not as expensive as to go to the military cooperation to the level of, as you mentioned, the United Military Command. Basically, we cooperate with the Baltics quite a lot. We usually present our perspective as a United Baltic perspective. We discuss it between our three countries, and then we present it to them, for example, in the NATO format, and other formats, to have this more solid groundwork, that it's not only the one country who are saying some things. But we also have lots, as I mentioned, other multinational cooperations. For example, we have this brigade of Lithuanian, Poland, and Ukrainian. I believe it's named after Ostrogishki hetman, and we also have some cooperation in the Baltic plus Nordic plus UK formats, and we also try to involve have very robust military cooperation. First of all, with Germany, as Germany is leading force for the NATO enhanced forward presence here in Lithuania, and also Poland plus United States.
Speaking theoretically, would Lithuania be interested to join Great Britain, Poland, and Ukraine alliance that was announced a few months back?
Yeah. I think Lithuania would. Well, first of all, I don't believe that it is alliance per se. It's a military cooperation for the intelligence sharing and so on. But there is no clause that you would send the troops. But I think that Lithuania tries to have as much common with Ukraine for the past few years as it's possible. We were one of those countries who were sending the instructors to Ukraine to train the military, sending some military hardware, which we do not possess ourselves a lot, but we were still trying to help. And regarding this pact, I think it's maybe a bit of our league, because these are three huge countries with vastly bigger military potential than ours, and we would join a pact where we would see that we would play a constructive role. And I think that the regional cooperation between Lithuania, Poland, and Ukraine is one of those formats where we can do something, basically. And we would not be so snobbish to say that we can do intelligence better than the British, because they're one of the best in the world about this. So yeah.
I see. Have a provocative question, if you don't mind. How confident are you that NATO would step in if Lithuania got either attacked or just certain infrastructural objects or structures in Lithuania got shelled from Kaliningrad or Belarus? How would you react? How do you think?
I don't think it's a provocative question at all, because this is the question that we were asking ourselves from 2013, basically, or even some people from 2008, since the attack on Georgia. This was one of the questions that we wanted to have answer as soon as possible, basically, and we implemented various means to basically to have this robust guarantee that basically if Lithuania gets attacked, we will have NATO respond. So basically, we were lobbying for the NATO enhanced force, NATO enhanced forward presence in the region. So it was implemented in 2018, I believe, or 17. Don't quote me on this, but and this would present the solid contingent of troops to a battalion-sized multinational troops in the Baltic states plus Poland. And after the Russian attack, after Russia declaring war, we have full-on fledged war. We have also other countries joining, Slovakia, Romania, and so on. But basically, this was the idea that we should present a tripwire deterrence for Russia. Tripwire basically means that there is a very small force of NATO troops here, but basically, if the war gets going, if there is a war, and one of those troops gets, for example, killed, damaged, or whatever, basically, then the countries of NATO would have very difficult position to say no, that we will not help because our troops they're already on the ground. So basically, Russia knows if they are coming here, they will face the whole alliance. So basically, in Lithuania, we have the Belgian troops, Americans. We sometimes host also Polish, Croatia, Czech. So basically, 9, maybe 7 to 9 countries sometimes rotate. So this was the idea, that we should present the deterrence, that we should present the to create this vision for Russia, that basically if they're planning to do something here, they should be planning to fight not only with Lithuania and that one battalion, but they should be planning to fight against whole NATO. But since the February 24th, this idea got basically completely changed, because now we are speaking that we should not have the forward deterrence, but we should have a forward defense. So we're getting back to the Cold War era terminology when we are speaking about the forward defense, where there's actually the troops who are they have the fighting capability to on day one on our 0 hour, they should go and go to the lines and fight, basically. This is the idea that we are we are trying to develop in NATO right now, and I hope that there will be some decisions made before, or maybe during the NATO summit in Madrid in the June of this summer. So there's this there is this direction that we were going from the just being NATO members before the 2014. From 2014 to 2022, we have this forward tripwire deterrence, and from 2022, we would like to have at least a not a battalion, but at least one brigade of multinational NATO troops in Lithuania, Latvia, and other countries. That would present very credible fighting force that Russia would have to take in mind that they will be here to defend, not only then to take back the Baltics, but they would also be defending here. Plus, we have this bilateral cooperation with United States, not in the NATO framework, but the bilateral agreement that we are hosting 1 battalion of U.S. Troops here. So now we have this mechanized battalion with Bradleys and Abrams. So we are very happy to host them. So we basically have at least 2 battalions, of one of NATO and one of US here. So yeah, this is very short.
That's actually quite a considerable development, because I remember from 2014 you had also like a big discussion about, so you have the Suwalki Gap that's really hard to protect in case of the invasion, and you don't really have enough troops to protect the Baltic states at all, so it's basically you invite NATO to avenge you after you got invaded. Now I see you're changing this idea that, okay, so we don't want to be that kind of place. So you want yourselves to be protected. And building on this question, like prior to February 24 and afterwards, for a couple of weeks at least, a lot of European analysts and organizations were quite surprised to see how resilient Ukrainians are, which came down to just how many Ukrainians actually wanted to fight or were ready to join up with military forces, with different agencies here. And my question to you is, how many Lithuanians would be willing to take up arms in case if need comes?
This is also quite good, very interesting topic to speak about in Lithuania, because now we are seeing also a shift to a general public defense in Lithuania. So we're shifting to this kind of Swedish concept of the general defense, that everybody should take basically some part in the resistance. From the latest polls that I saw, at least more than half of people asked should they defend Lithuania with arms, so basically taking the weapons. So more than half of Lithuanians are basically saying that they will fight. So this is more than a million. So it's quite a lot of people. Also take in mind the elderly and so on. So maybe we will have around 500,000, but nonetheless, this is quite big number for Lithuania. And plus, after we still have not felt, we still didn't measure the effect of Lithuanian society, how Lithuanian society responded after seeing the images from Bucha, seeing the images from Mariupol, seeing images from the Kiev suburbs and Chernihiv and so on. So I think the longer this war goes, the more angry we will get, basically, and the more resilient we will be, because we will know that what will happen to us if Russians will come here. I think this will have a very profound effect on Lithuanian society, because basically on every European society, because we did not see the destruction at this level for a very long time in Europe. The intensity of the fighting, we did not see this. We did not see the urban fighting at this extent, basically using mass artillery airstrikes and so on. We did not see this. And it will be very interesting to see the polls number after some time, when it gets settled down and people will basically live in new status quo, basically knowing what will happen. And it already has some effects, because there's a lot of solidarity with the Ukrainian people in Lithuania. It is you cannot go on the social media Lithuanian social bubble and not see posts about every second post will be about Ukraine, helping Ukraine, arming Ukraine, helping Ukrainians in Lithuania. And from today's, from what I saw, and that the Ukrainians basically became the third largest ethnic minorities in Lithuania already. So it's quite, I think we have quite a lot of Ukrainians now. So yeah, I think the resilience will grow because we will know basically who are Russia, what is Russia basically, how it's fighting. So
yeah. Yeah, it's been a wake-up call for many, including many of Ukrainians as well, to see what happened. And yeah, it's interesting how those ripples will go around Europe, what it will affect. And in this potential fight, who do you think your greatest ally is from among the countries? How do you think?
well, I would say every single Eastern European state, basically, plus United States, obviously. I'm speaking more now. Now that when I'm mentioning the Eastern European states, some states, I do think that we just those countries who are closer to Russia, we just know better what Russia is. We have more profound understanding of because of our history, of our legacy, because of everything we endured throughout the centuries. But when we are speaking more politically, we have very close cooperation with the Germany. Even though the communication from the German government was quite lackluster in some terms during the war, but we still depend on Germany to take up this leadership role in Europe, and we would like to have Germany as a leader in the region. Because this is one of the biggest economies, one of the most stable economies, which has very robust and strong political system. And those Germany also believes in those values that we believe, and we would like to have Germany as a leader in Europe. But speaking also in the strategic terms, we understand that the Poland is one of the key basically the key guarantees of the security in the region because of, first of all, of the Slovakia gap, second of the Poland's military capabilities, which are well growing every basically day now, and because we just with Poland we are also have this very close relationship, historical and political and economical now. So Poland is. So basically, yeah. So it's Poland, United States, and Germany. We see those three countries as the pillars of securing this region to first of all ensuring the deterrence, and second of all, if the worst happens, these three countries will we would like to see as the leaders in fighting against the Russian aggression if that would come to the Baltics.
I see. You mentioned Germany as one of the primary players here. Germany getting a lot of flack for its stance currently on the supply of heavy weaponry to Ukraine because it basically gets postponed all the time, and new ways are found to basically ignore this issue. And how confident are you that Germany would step in if anything happens? Does it like have any other messages that it sends directly to its NATO allies that are different from Ukraine, or the situation actually affects you as well, as you may not be as dependable on them? How do you think?
Well, I think that those changes that we are seeing right now in the German policy towards Russia, they did not happen overnight. That already famous Scholz speech in the Bundestag in the beginning of March, where he announced the stepping up in the defense matters, it did not happen overnight. This it is quite impossible for this kind of tectonic shift of policy. It did not happen just overnight. I think there is understanding, growing understanding in Germany what Russia is, and that Russia is not a reliable trade partner. Basically, in Russian rationale, the priority is not good trade relations. It is not good economical relations. It is not the priority of Russia to have political stability in the region. I think Germans more and more are more realizing this, and I think that unfortunately the war had to happen, that Germany would have this wake-up call. Basically, we know that also Germany is a huge basically bureaucratic apparatus, and the changes are also sometimes are very painful and slow, but we need to know that they are happening. The sole declaration about the LNG terminals is also quite painful for Germany to take. We need to basically we need to accept that some things will happen slower. I understand for Ukrainians and for Ukraine it is quite difficult to understand how basically some things like this happening so slow. But for Europeans, I think for the European Union, I think we need to push Germans to make this understanding of Russia more clearer, more broader, more universal. But it won't happen very, very soon. And we also have to take in mind that the Germans also providing very serious arms to Ukraine now. Not everything that we would like to for them to provide, but they are doing stuff, and they're also providing quite a lot of money. And to compare this with the status quo, like 6 months ago, it would not be imaginable that Germany would do this. So I think that the communication sometimes is very slow, uncoordinated. Sometimes we see that the chancellor is saying one thing and the defense minister is saying other things, or the foreign minister is saying other things. So I think we need to understand that there is some kind of a crisis for them to resolve. And I hope that the Germans will have more serious policy towards Russia in regards of that we need to contain Russia, not to trade with Russia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, many countries in Europe, at least to my knowledge, are having this kind of break in communication that they built for many years, whereas a certain economic stability won any foreign policy priorities or values, to say the least. And now many are trying to either backtrack or to start something anew, and it certainly takes time. But yeah, like for Ukraine, time is like precious, and of course we react a little bit different to things like this. Yeah, continuing on with some more security questions. What do Lithuanians think about Sweden and Finland joining NATO? Do they think that's a good idea or not?
Well, I cannot speak about the broader public opinion.
That's fine.
I don't believe I saw the polls about this, but for the security community and the decision-making community here, I think it will have one of the biggest security implications to the Baltic region since the fall of Berlin Wall. it will change things. Even though we know that the Swedes and Finns are already very tightly integrated with the NATO structures regarding military communication, they are always present often present in NATO summits, not only in the to show this to the public, but to do very concrete steps. We have their militaries are on the standard, on the NATO standard, basically, which is majority of I don't know, such things as rifle cartridges or NATO caliber and so on. So we have this very close interconnectivity already with them. But also we need to take in mind that this would send a signal to Russia that basically the West does believe that Russia poses threat not only to Ukraine. And this is very important message to basically to the whole world, because we see the Russia as a threat to the stability and the peace to the whole, not only to the whole region, but to the whole basically world, to Europe first of all. And Finland and Sweden joining NATO, it would send a very a very clear message to Putin himself that his foreign policy doesn't work. His foreign policy is now based on threats. It was based on threats for a very long time. They do not have anything appealing to sell to other countries other than gas, oil, some weapons, and fear, basically. And I'm struggling myself to understand this Russian foreign policy, because every time something happens that Russia does not like, they only send threats. They do not they do not propose anything constructive to the discussion. They do not want to solve this problem. They just want to send threats, as we saw that already Finland was threatened, Sweden was threatened, but we also need to take in mind that this is most probably the empty threats. Russia is not a superpower as it was during the Soviet Union period. So yeah, the Sweden and Finland joining the NATO, it would be very profound for the whole Baltic Sea region. Putin did not want to see Ukraine in NATO, but he will most probably see whole Baltic Sea being NATO and having NATO 30 kilometers from St. Petersburg. So this is so much for his foreign policy and the security policy that he would like to present himself as a master strategist. So, yeah.
In all honesty, I personally think that Putin's policy is like what he gets for enacting his policy is self-inflicted, because many of the things that happened in Ukraine, him losing his certain constituents who would support like pro-Russian use, is just because of his actions, not because we've done something special here, not at all. Like, I don't want to belittle our political system, but it's clear to me, at least in this regard. Another question is regarding Belarus. How's your relationship with Belarus changed since February 24? How do you consider them a threat now, or how does it work?
I think the February 24th basically showed us that there is no more independent Belarus. The Belarus is already a platform for Russia to attack its neighbors. We knew this fact, but this was manifestation of this fact, a very clear and very terrifying manifestation that I don't think that a lot of us had even thought of this idea. I remember there were a lot of analysts saying that the Russian forces which were stationed in Belarus, they would be not used in the military attack, the full-on attack against Ukraine, that they would be used there as a deterrent or whatever, but they will not be used as as a invading force to capture Kiev, Chernihiv, and so on. And this basically shows that the Lukashenko is a puppet of Putin, to say very bluntly, of course. But I think that the Lukashenko tries to maneuver now himself a bit to get out of this mess that he himself created, basically. Because if he did not let the Russian troops attack Kiev from Belarus, most probably the war would not happen. I think that he will try to communicate again with the European Union to ease up the sanctions, and that Belarus somehow will again be less dependent on Russia. But we know that all of these talks are just it's not true. He will never be independent from Putin, because the system he himself created. So for us, it changes a lot in the military strategy regarding how are we speaking more about the deterrent, or are we speaking about the forward defense? Because as Minsk allowed Iskanders and other equipment to be stationed in Belarus, including S-400, the air defense system, we see that Russia can send its troops to Belarusian territory next to our border very quickly. They're trained to do that. Every single Zapad, basically, training exercise is meant to send troops very quickly to Lithuanian border and try to occupy Lithuania, basically. They are just showing it on their maps. So we know this, and this changes our strategic military calculus, and we already seeing some changes in how we'll what our response will be. And our response will be that there will be more US troops, there will be more NATO troops here, and more Lithuanian troops itself.
Yeah, as you mentioned, military maps, I just instantly remember that already famous video of Lukashenko showing where the attack from Ukraine would come. And yeah, we were also quite unprepared, as admitted by the head of our Security Council here, that we weren't prepared for the invasion from Belarus, or at least were kind of surprised by it. Yet still, we kind of stopped it. Building on this question, actually, there is another military one. During the first days of invasion, the amount of weaponry in private hands was quite a serious challenge to Russians in Chernihiv and Sumy regions. How many people in Lithuania do have arms as their homes?
Well, I don't remember the exact figure, but the law on holding the weapon at home is quite very strict. You need to do a lot of procedures to get the permit license for getting the weapon. But the interesting thing was that maybe 2 weeks after the 24th of February, Lithuanian Seimas adopted a new law, a new legislature, saying that we have this paramilitary thing called Rifles Union. Basically, it's not the part of the army, but they have some units that are training us to do basically to fight. And there is quite a lot of these units, and they did not have the permits to have the weapon at home. So basically, the parliament adopted a law saying that the Riflemen's Union and the forces of the territorial defense, we have this quite CASP. It's called. We have this equivalent. So they have a right to have the automatic weapon at home and to use this weapon if basically the war happens. So it was quite significant because it frees up a lot of bureaucratic nonsense that you have to do basically for people who know how to handle guns, and trained to fight with those guns, to have these guns basically at home and ready at any minute. So it was quite significant, and I believe it was made on the experience of Ukraine to some extent, basically.
Yeah, our experience changed from really bureaucratic procedures of getting any kind of firearm to basically hanging guns from a truck bed in just a few hours. Yeah, it was, an interesting experience, to say the least. Yeah, it is interesting that other countries also kind of drawing their own conclusions from this outcome. Also, prior to the invasion, Estonia wanted to send a few howitzers from Soviet era that were stationed in Eastern Germany. I think that they bought from the stocks of Eastern Germany that belonged to the current Germany, and they didn't get the permit to do so, to send them to Ukraine. That is. Did you have any cases like that? Have any maybe like NATO members prevented you from sending aid to Ukraine?
No, I don't think so. We sent US-made Stingers and other equipment that not always is disclosed, which is a good thing, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I don't believe we had the cases when our aid was blocked.
Yeah, I also think that it's a good thing that, a lot of aid that comes to Ukraine is kind of unknown, because at first you could just basically draw up the list of what's coming, and while fun as and like for an analyst, but it's really bad for intelligence, I think. But anyway, maybe you know of any like new pledges that Lithuanian government wants to send to Ukraine, whether it be weaponry or humanitarian aid.
I don't think that we do not disclose the aid beforehand. Usually, we do it after we send it and it's already delivered. Then we say that it is done, basically. So I cannot say anything that will be sent, but we have lots of those private initiatives. We have this blue and yellow, which already got more than 25 million from the general public, and it's quite a lot of money for the private. And there is tens, not if not hundreds more like this initiatives taking food, clothes, and going back to even to the ballistic shields for the body armor, cartridges, night vision goggles, infrared sights. I know that even there is a sniper community here in Lithuania, which is gathering the optics basically for the snipers and sending those to Ukraine. So there's very small communities who are doing something on themselves, and especially the military communities from the military. There's also a lot of those private things. Some, I don't know, the mechanics were taking the pickup trucks and basically armoring those and sending to Lviv and so on. And there's like a lot of those things, and more than a half of people in Lithuania already have done something in this regard, which is, I think, very needed and very good initiative from the Lithuanian people.
Yeah, the amount of or the scope of private initiatives actually surprised me, because you and your colleagues told me that's just basically small communities, small cities, small villages are sending stuff to Ukraine just on private terms, without any like oversight from the government, and it's amazing. It's just amazing.
I know that it is I know, for instance, some cases where people were looking up how to smuggle some goods to Ukraine because they don't want to show these goods to, for example, to the Polish police, because those goods are not allowed in the public hands. So basically, even to this extent, the people were smuggling things to Ukraine just to help people fighting. So, and it's not also humanitarian aid. There's a lot of weapons going there. And I know also another fun fact is that there were people actually evacuating some people from the Chernobyl area, because we have this very small community of stalkers who have this very interesting, I don't know, thing just to go to the Chernobyl and illegally to Chernobyl. And even though they were stationed, the Russian troops were there, those people went there and they extracted some people from the Chernobyl. And they gave those people the coordinates, the workers of the Chernobyl atomic power plant. They gave those workers the coordinates how to illegally trespass the forests in the Chernobyl and get to the safe point. So there are those little stories, those human stories, which I think this is just an incredible that people are basically breaking the law to help Ukrainians. Basically, it's fascinating in my mind, and there's millions like these stories more. So everyone has something to tell. But that one with the stalkers just like blew my mind. It's like, wow, it's unbelievable.
Well, it's actually the first time I hear about that. I would be I would love to hear more about it. If you could send me the link for the story, like it would be great. I would share it as well. As it, like there is a popular joke in Ukraine currently that while governments are thinking whether they're gonna send jets or not, volunteers are already thinking how to smuggle them. It's because people are way more efficient, at least at first, when it comes to crises. My next question would be the fatigue, because volunteering on any kind of project or initiative takes a lot of your personal effort, a lot of strength. How's the society reacts to it? Like, are they still strong enough to continue supporting, or are they getting tired?
I think that maybe the moods in the general public, the broad public, are already a bit diminishing, but every single those bigger initiatives are still going very strong. And that goes basically to the thing that just the very nature to be a good person, to help people in need, and help people in need who are suffering the absolutely unprovoked war of conquest. And this is for Lithuania, it's basically the flashbacks to the Soviet times when we were occupied by the Soviet Union. And we cannot believe that this is happening in 2022, and we need to do something about this. So a lot of initiatives are still going very strong. There's still people going to Ukraine, helping Ukraine, getting those buses and driving to Dnipro or whatever, just to take those children out of those zones and evacuate them. So there's still a lot of spirit left.
That is great to hear, and thank you for doing that to the entire Lithuania, for myself and listeners.
There's nothing to thank for. We are in this together, basically.
It is great to have friends like that. And just having to live through turbulent times and not knowing what's going to happen tomorrow, and then hear that there are people who we don't even know personally are just spending their time to help us. It is inspiring, to say the least. So there is something to thank for. And my last question, I know you're a little bit of an expert on the youth in Lithuania, and what does youth think about the war in Ukraine?
Well, I think the youth was one of the most active, basically, how to say, parts of the public. because a lot of the youth saw the news and saw the images, terrifying images first, because they use the social media and the news spread on social media very fast. A lot of people created Twitter basically during past few months just to see the news firsthand very quickly, because that there is constant flow on information. So there is that. Also, a lot of the initiatives were made by young people, and this is a very good sign. There's various initiatives starting from the arts and going back even to the military support. I think youth is very unanimous about this war, because we already were born in the independent Lithuania, where we could learn the history, the independent basically history, and see the atrocities made by the Soviet regime, and we know basically what happened. We still see the scars in our society that were left by the Soviet regimes, and we are not going just to. It is very difficult for us to understand that this is happening again in our times, in our lifetimes. As I mentioned, youth is quite unanimous about the things that are going on, and very terrifying things.
I'm truly thankful for your time.
Well, thank you. It was my pleasure. Absolutely no problem. And Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава. Ačiū.